Hey tubers, I'm in downtown Denver. I thought I would check out the Union Station area. There's been a lot of activity down here in the last few years. Honestly, I thought it would be more done than what I'm seeing. So not done. I'm still glad I'm down here. There's tons to see. Tons to photograph. Problem is I've got 2 sheets and a lot of possible subjects. So I'm going to keep looking around for a bit and see what I can find. I was kind of hoping that this view on this hill right next to the Platte River would be worth shooting. It is interesting. I mean, it's got a lot of architectural detail, but it's a lot of same architectural detail, and there's not a lot of variety. I hope I'm getting this. There we go. There's not a lot of variety in the height of the buildings from this angle. We do have these taller ones over here, but I don't think I'm going to be able to make a really great composition here, so I'm going to keep kind of hunting around. Right now I'm actually at Union Station. All of this has been redone and is being redone. It's pretty amazing the changes in downtown Denver. If the economy is suffering, it's kind of hard to see the effects of it around here anyway. This is kind of a neat shot right here. I've got a 90mm lens on me. I kind of wish that I had the 75, but it's on a technical lens board, and I would have had to move it to an Arca Swiss 110mm board to take it out today. Didn't feel like doing it. It was like one more thing that would get in the way of getting out. So hopefully the 90 will do. We'll see. I'm gonna look around a bit more. All right, it looks like this particular shot is going to work really well with the 120. As usual, 120 shoots everything perfectly. But no, I can get this curve in, so it'll be very symmetrical. That's okay, doing it on purpose. And you know, there'll be people moving in and out from the side, so that'll add a little extra interest. But obviously I don't want anybody right in the shot. I asked the local gendarme if it's okay, and they said as long as you're out of the way and as long as it's for personal use only, no problem. So I should be good to go. Okay, I've got the camera leveled according to its levels anyway. So I'm going to lock the tripod head down pretty tight. Now I can put the lens on, and then I'll set up my composition. Okay, you'll notice that I don't have the light posts centered, but I do have the roof of the structure centered. The reason I don't have the light posts centered, but the roof of the structure is centered, is because the light posts themselves are not centered. So that's kind of interesting. I used just a little tiny bit of shift to get the composition I wanted, and a lot of rise, because I want to get the roof, this curve, I want to get that into the picture without having to tilt the camera up. I think I'm going to spot meter this. There's a lot of white structure up here, and so I'm just going to take a highlight reading off of that and use that as my basic exposure. I don't think I'm going to have a problem with any shadows, so I'll roll the dice and see what happens. So with that reading made, I then hit the H button, which puts this thing into highlight mode and adjusts the exposure for the highlights. So what I'm basically doing is putting the highlights into, I believe it's zone 8, and that will be fine for this structure. I think it's not quite white, and as I said, my shadows will be fine. So that gives me F8 at 250th of a second, but I'm definitely going to want to shoot at a smaller aperture than that. I'm going to go really small on this. I'm going to go for F45 at an 1/8 of a second. Okay, the exposure is taken. I waited for someone, I believe they came into frame. They're going to be at the far right, and there'll be a little motion because it was at an 1/8 of a second, but I think maybe it'll add a little interest to the photo, which otherwise might be a bit sterile. I guess we'll see what happens. I would love to shoot this building right here. I'm not really sure whether I can make it work. There's a parking lot right here in front of it. If I got far enough away to use a longer lens, then I got to be in full sun, and that is no fun under a black focusing cloth, believe me. If I get closer to where I'm in the shade and can kind of get this framed, then I have to get a shorter focal length, my 120 for example, and then I think it would take a pretty extreme movement to get the top of the building in. So I'm sitting here arguing with myself whether to bother trying this or not, but man, do I like the play of shadows there, just the overall, the details, the little sort of building on top, etc., etc. All that stuff makes it an interesting subject for me, but I'm kind of arguing with myself over whether to shoot it or not. Okay folks, we're talking extreme rise here. This is what's called indirect rise. I ran out of rise on my front standard. So getting extreme rise is a little tricky. I've tilted the rail back to fit everything in, but now the standards are tilted, and that's the whole thing we're trying to avoid with a large format camera. So what we do about that is actually level the standards back out using our levels. I'm doing this one-handed, so I'm not sure how well that's going to work out. Lock that in and do the same with the rear standard. But now the camera is set up with extreme rise. We need to make sure that we don't get vignetting from the bellows or from hitting the limitations of the lens's coverage. But that's how I was able to fit that building in on that photo. At least most of it. I had a touch of vignetting at the top. So pretty amazing. And what I'm doing is getting the very bottom of the building, avoiding this car, up to above the top of the building, and it's all perfectly flat. So that's what I was going for. Let's hope that it turns out.